Hi everyone, welcome back to this series of PMP practice questions, perfect for preparing for your PMP exam. And in this particular one, we're looking at waterfall questions, which are still really prominent. You will still find waterfall or predictive questions in your PMP exam, even though it is moving a little bit more towards the agile, questions as well. But this is a great way to get accustomed to it. They're quite difficult. They're scenario-based as well, just like you'll find on the real exam. These are 10 questions and it's going to be a whole bunch of fun. Let's get into it. Question 1. You're working on a project to build a new parkland for the community. The person in charge of parkland design approaches you as they are not sure what they are supposed to be working on. What will you do next? Okay. All right, so what are the people supposed to be working on? How do we know what our people are supposed to be working on? Let's see what options we have. Review the project scope statement to see what the team is delivering. So the project scope statement is just usually a verbal statement of what the scope is going to be, so someone describing it. Probably not what we're after here. Review the WBS or Work Breakdown Structure Dictionary to see the detailed description of the scope and the work and who it's assigned to. This one could work because it's the work breakdown structure, but it's the dictionary which has all of the extra details for each of the broken down items. So you've got the high level items up here, and then they're broken down into smaller pieces. But this is actually giving them lots of all the details. So it's who's assigned to it, what's the unique identifier, what's the testing criteria, and a lot of that sort of thing. So that actually could work, especially if we're talking about who is assigned to the item. I think this could be our guy. Review the requirements traceability matrix to see where the scope comes from. The requirements traceability matrix probably isn't what we're after, because that will just trace the requirements from the requirements to the scope that we're delivering. And review the assumption log to see who we assume should do the work. I would say never assume if we can help it, but that's why we have the assumption log, so we note down what we have assumed. I think for our purposes, let's go with answer B. All right, there it is. The Work Breakdown Structure Dictionary is a detailed description of the scope of work broken down to the work package level, where it can be assigned to someone to work on. It includes acceptance criteria, an assignee, cost information, schedule information, and resource requirements. So all of the information that we do need there, and information for people to know what they should be working on and what's assigned to them. And there it is in the PMBOK guide, 6th edition, which is a great waterfall guide, and also a little bit of agile in there as well. But page 162, Work Breakdown Structure Dictionary, if you want to check that out for yourself. All right, how did you guys go? I thought that was a very good one. Nice one to start off with. Question 2. You have taken over as a project manager for a project that has had issues delivering on time. You review the earned value management and find the corresponding schedule performance index and cost performance index values are 0.86 and 1.12. You advise the project sponsor, who asks you to bring the project back on track within the next 2 months. What will you do next? Wow, okay, this is tricky. So what actions are we going to take to bring our project back on track? But we also have to know what is wrong with our project, well, if anything. So it says we've had issues delivering on time, but what do the SPI and CPI actually say? So here's the trick that we use with the schedule performance index and the cost performance index. And that is, it's around the number 1. So if something is less than 1, it means we've delivered less than what we should have at that point in time. If we've delivered more than 1, then we've delivered more than what we could have at that point in time. So schedule performance index is 0.86, and that means we've delivered less than what we should have. We're behind schedule. But the cost performance index is 1.12, and so we've delivered more than what we could have, so we're ahead of our budget, so we're under our budget. So knowing that, we've got money to spend, but we're also behind schedule. So let's have a look. Oh, and I can already see it. I wonder if you guys can too. Let's have a look. Apply schedule crashing to bring the project back on track. So schedule crashing is where we throw money and resources at the project schedule to bring it back on track. So as it says, well, I didn't even have to repeat that, but there it is. That's probably what we're going to go for, because we can put more people on and use up a little bit of that money because we're ahead of our budget. We're under our budget. What else have we got though? Apply fast tracking to bring the project back on track. Fast tracking is when we have items in sequence And instead of that, we actually try to do them in parallel at the same time. And that way we bring our schedule in that way. So that one usually doesn't cost as much, if anything, and it's usually a good way to do it. But we have money to spare, so I think we can still go with the schedule crashing approach. Update the risk register and assign the risk of project failure to an executive with the power to bring it back on track. Probably not that one for now, even though it's tempting to assign something to someone else and have them do the work. We're the project manager, we have to take care of this probably. And reduce the project scope to bring the project back on track. That is another option, and you will see that in the real world. But I think for all of the things that we're talking about here, knowing what we know, let's go with answer A. All right, there it is, excellent. The project is behind schedule, delivered less than one, but under budget and ahead of on cost, delivered more than one. So this means we have money to spend, and we need to reduce the schedule or bring it back in line. Of the techniques here, schedule crashing throws money and resources at the project to get it done faster and becomes the best option presented. And of course, if you want to check this out in the PMBOK guide yourself, page 215 under schedule compression. So a nice bit of bedtime reading, guaranteed to put you to sleep, but also really good to check it out for yourself during your own studies. That's going to be great. All right, how did you go? That was really, really good. All right, let's go to the next question. You're working on a change that includes stakeholders at all levels, from the frontline workers to the senior executives. After performing stakeholder analysis, you and your team group the stakeholders according to their level of influence and the impact the change will have on them. The project sponsor asks what engagement strategy you will use for the frontline workers. What will you do next? Okay, so by the sounds of this, it's looking like an impact over influence chart. So we've got, say, usually from 1 to 10, 1 to 10. So the impact and the influence. So what is the influence? Are they a high-powered executive with a high influence? Then we probably want to communicate with them a lot. And is their area impacted very highly as well? Then we probably want to communicate with those guys a lot as well. But what have we got? So, oh, that's right. So there are 4 different responses depending on what quadrant they are here. So if someone is a high influence, and also a high impact, then we probably want to do the most we possibly can. They're all the way up here. So we want to manage them closely, probably. Keep them satisfied, probably. I would say we manage them closely. I would say that's going to be our A up there. Monitor them only. That's probably if they haven't got an impact and they haven't got any influence as well. Keep them satisfied and keep them informed. If they're influential, we want to, that's B, that's C. We want to keep them satisfied if they're highly influential. Definitely, we need to keep those executives satisfied. They could end our career potentially, or at least send us to the next company, to send us back to the unemployment line for sure. But that leaves us, keep them informed, I think, is high impact. Our frontline workers are getting impacted because everything, the change happens to our frontline workers doing the work. And so we want to keep them informed, I think, but they don't have a high influence because, they're not executive level. I'm pretty sure we're on the money here, so let's go with answer D. All right, fantastic. That was really good. I thought that was really good. Analyzing the stakeholders using an impact over influence grid, you will have 4 quadrants: high influence and high impact, manage closely, high influence, and that's exactly what we're talking about. So all of that, we don't need to go through that again, but that's how you would look at one of those charts, and that's how you would use that in the real world as well, which is actually really handy. Frontline workers in this case have a low influence, but receive a high impact from the project. Keep them informed. And if you want to check that out for yourself, page 512 in the PMBOK guide, impact over influence grid is the section that you're looking for. PMBOK 6th edition, of course, which is that great waterfall guide. And this is a great bunch of waterfall questions. I'm having a good bunch of fun too. How did you go? I thought that was pretty good. I hope you did well on that one. Let's go to the next one and see how we do. You are working directly with the project sponsor in the initial phase of a brand new project. The project sponsor asks for your help in creating a document, okay, here's our tip, that formally authorizes the project. Oh, I love this. This is pretty simple, I think. Including details such as the cost-benefit analysis, feasibility study, and high-level risks. What will you do next? I think this one, it's not going to be a project management plan or anything like that. It's probably going to be the one that kicks off our project, which is the project charter. So we need approval from the project charter to get resources and money to kickstart our project. And I can already see it there. It's probably going to be answer C for us. What else have we got though? Milestone project chart, not that one. Business case, that might come before our project charter. So business case, still valid, but not for us at the moment. And project management plan happens when we're planning our project once we have it all approved. So for us, let's go with answer C. All right, doing well, doing really well. The project charter is the document that formally authorizes the project. The business case, cost-benefit analysis, and feasibility studies are inputs into this document and the process. That's good to know. And to help provide a link between the project and the strategic objectives of the organization. So why are we doing this project in the first place? It's because those feasibility studies gave us a reason to do it. You know, what's the strategy? What's the company trying to do? Page 75 in the PMBOK guide, develop the project charter. If you want to check that out for yourself, I highly recommend it. That was excellent. How did you guys go on that one? I thought that was very nice. And we're almost halfway through this little section. You're doing great. Keep going. You're working as a project manager and your team is about to deliver the completed system to the customer. During the final round of testing, the customer points out that a major piece of functionality is missing, which should have been in scope but was not previously thought of. Okay, I have a good feeling about this one. So a major piece of functionality is missing, which should have been in scope but was previously not thought of. What will you do next? So this could either be about a change request or it could be about budget, so using out some of our reserves. Let's have a look at the options that we have here. Okay, deliver the system to the customer as it is with the promise to add the functionality later. Okay, definitely not this one, because once our project is done, we might disband our project and the people might disappear, and then we actually won't deliver those things to the customer. So probably not the best course of action for us. Ask the sponsor to accept the risk and move on. We've probably got a better option than that one as well. We could see if we could come to some sort of win-win approach here. Utilize your project's, here we go, reserves. Contingency reserves and management reserves. And the difference here is, so we've got these two options, contingency reserves. So we've got our initial project cost budget. We add the contingency reserves on that for all of the risks that we've thought about on our project. So what are the known unknowns or the known threats for our project? That's our contingency reserve. That becomes the project budget, which we add the management reserve to. And the management reserve is for unforeseen scope, but definitely stuff that's still in scope, but stuff that we hadn't thought of, and we might need to use that management reserve right at the end. So I think that's what we're talking about here. And for that purpose, I think we're going to go with answer D. All right, great stuff. Management reserves are a specified amount of the project budget withheld for management control purposes, great, and reserved for unforeseen work that is within the scope of the project. And if you want to check that out again in the PMBOK guide, page 202, reserve analysis, a great way to go straight there and have a look for yourself. Great stuff. You did really, really well. I thought that was fantastic. And also fantastic, we're halfway done. You're doing great. I think these are quite good, and I'm getting a good sense for waterfall methodology already, which is really nice. All right, let's get to it. Your team have completed the work on the project, and the customer has confirmed the formal acceptance of the product has been delivered. You set a meeting with your team to document the lessons learned, release and reassign the personnel as needed. What will you do next? Okay, so they're accepting we're basically wanting to close down the project, document the lessons learned and reassign the personnel. So this must be about project closure. So if we think about the PMBOK guide as well, what are the steps that we need to take during the closing of the project phase? Now I can't remember them off the top of my head, but let's see if anything rings a bell here. Okay, gain final sign-off on the risk report with the steering committee. Okay, That does not ring a bell for me. And I don't think we need to do that because everything is pretty much tucked away at this point anyway. The risks, the project is basically delivered. So, the risk has almost gone to zero for our delivery. So it's done. So that's great. Archive all of the project information for future use by the organization. That sounds very promising. That's definitely part of our closure activities. So we're archiving that project information just in case someone needs to use it in the future, because a project is just a time-boxed, piece of time and delivering a piece of value, and and then it disappears. So we will still want to capture some of that information and lock it away so that people can use it in the future. I think that's going to be our one. Review project documents for any open risks or issues. Ooh, that could be good as well, except again, the product has already been delivered and accepted. So I think it's already accepted. By this time, issues and risks should have already been dealt with. Ask the customer for a formal contract closure letter. Oh goodness, that could be good as well. But I don't think that would be for more of a third party, like a vendor, for procurement. I really think it's going to be answer B. Let's try it. Okay, thank goodness. Of all the options available, only archive all the project information for future use by the organization is part of the project closure activities. So that is exactly what we're talking about there, and that's fantastic. And if you want to check out that, so that actual process and what's involved in that process, page 123, close your project or your phase, that process in the PMBOK guide. Excellent work. Great stuff. All right. That was a little bit trickier. Gosh, I hope they're not getting trickier as we go along. Although, maybe that could be a good thing. Let's see what we've got next. You're working as a project manager for a medium-sized software project. The project sponsor believes that the team have not completed enough work in the last 2 weeks and comes to talk to you about it. What will you do next? Okay, so how do we measure that they have not done enough work in the last 2 weeks? What do we need to do? Okay, let's have a look at our options. Review the team burn down chart to see the flow of work versus what was committed. That could work. In the last 2 weeks, so that's our sprint, that's a burn down chart as well. That actually could work. Let's see what other options we have. Review the project risk register and raise a risk on project performance. I think we need to check first, so let's not raise a risk just yet. We need to confirm with data. Ask the team to work harder, putting in overtime where possible. We don't want that either because we want a sustainable flow of work. So we want to be able to maintain our pace indefinitely, not have peaks and troughs where people work really hard and then have lots of sick leave because they're so stressed. So that's not what we want. Let's see the other one. Tell the project sponsor to focus on their area and let you manage the project. Whew, good, that's a spicy answer, that one. And you know what, sometimes we may want to say those things. However, we also need to maintain our relationships, especially with the project sponsor, very important, as they're probably funding the project and funding the resources. So for our purposes, I think we're going to go with answer A. And there it is. It's best to solve problems with real data and ensure that they're real problems to begin with, so it's not just hearsay. The iteration burndown chart tracks the work that remains to be completed in the iteration backlog. It shows the variance against the work committed. What did we say we were going to do? And what did we actually get done? And here it is in the PMBOK 6th edition. Again, like a few agile tools in there. Page 226, the iteration burndown chart, if you want to check that out for yourself. Great work. That was excellent. And a nice little bit of a different one. We can have hybrid projects with some agile tools and some waterfall tools at the same time. Very, very important. All right, next question. You're working on a project that involves the renovation and removal of an old industrial plant. When investigating the area with your team to capture the project scope, you notice there are old chemicals left behind, which hurt your lungs when you breathe them in. What will you do next? Okay, so, wow, let's see what our options are here, because it could be a few different things. Okay, and looks like we're talking about risks. Here we go, all of these risks. So do we accept the risk? Now, how bad is it? So old chemicals left behind, which hurt your lungs when you breathe them in. That's pretty bad, okay? So I don't think we just want to accept that risk. That means we wouldn't do anything about it and we just accept it as it is. Not for now. Escalate the risk to your manager. I mean, not the best option, but maybe. Transfer the risk by hiring an external company to remove the chemicals. I think that's probably our one. When something's really dangerous or really expensive, we transfer it to a third party, and that's like insurance, for example, where you pay, a premium, like your car insurance. You pay a little bit of money, and then if you do have an accident, they pay you the money for the car. So, but again, every year you might be paying that money, and eventually the insurance company will also make their money back. So yeah, that's how you transfer the risk. I think that's probably going to be our one in this case. Avoid the risk by working on areas which don't have chemicals. We don't really have that option or that luxury. So let's go with answer C. All right, we're doing great. You're doing great. I think this is good. We're really getting through this, and there's a nice little range of different questions here too. This question asks that we have a knowledge of risk responses. Of all the options where genuine danger or high risk is involved, transferring the risk to a third party through insurance is the best approach. Mitigating the risk through proper controls, so controlling the risk, would also be a good approach, but this option was not presented here. PMBOK Guide 443, page 443, under Strategies for Threats. So that's our risk section, if you want to check that out for yourself. That was really, really good. All right, and you know what else is really good? We're up to the last two questions in this little section, and you're doing fantastic work. Let's get through them so we can go and have a cup of tea and a bit of a relax. Let's get into it. During user acceptance testing, a senior user points out a major change needed to the project scope for it to be successful. Okay. Another change to scope? Is this management reserves again? I don't know, it could be, or is it a change request? You realize you may not have enough money or resources to complete your project, but you will need approval to increase either. What will you do next? Okay, so it's a change to our project budget, potentially, money or resources. Let's have a look. Review the change management plan for the correct change control process, including approvers on the change control board. Wow, well that sounds pretty promising. That sounds very promising actually. Let's see what our other options are, and that could be our one. Review the configuration management plan to find out who can configure the project scope. No, configuration management plan is what needs to be baselined. So is it our scope document? Is it our schedule document? Is it our cost, our budget? So are those things baselined? And that's what the configuration management plan tells us, which of those is baselined and how. Review the scope management plan to see how changes to scope should be handled. That is also a good one. This is very tricky, but I think because we're talking specifically about the change control process, I think we're still going to stick with answer A. The scope management plan tells us how we manage the scope, so including including the change control process sometimes as well. So it could actually be C. They're both pretty good. Last one, review the quality management plan to see rules for user acceptance testing. Okay, we can safely rule that one out. So I think between A and C, I think A is still our best option. Let's go with that for now. All right, there it is. I think maybe we got lucky there because those two were both pretty close. The change management plan provides the process for managing change control, including the change control board and who's on it and the process and that sort of thing. Configuration management plan, baseline documents. Scope management plan shows how scope will be defined, validated and controlled. And quality management plan is the testing plan, so not for what we're after. And of all of those, we've got page 88, 129 and 286 in the PMBOK guide if you want to check out those different parts and see how they differ from each other as well. All right, that was really, really good. A new executive has started in the functional area that you're delivering to. They are concerned that the project is not delivering what they need, and they put pressure on you to deliver more than what was originally agreed. You agree to meet and talk through the scope baseline so you are on the same page. What will you do next? Okay, wow, this is very tricky. Pressure from executives, of course, you'll get this in the real world as well. This will definitely happen. Okay, what are we going to do? Gather the requirements traceability matrix and the feature Gantt chart. Oh, probably not for now. Oh, let's have a look. Feature list and current sprint backlog. The scope baseline. Okay, we're talking about the scope baseline. So that's not the scope baseline. Approved scope management plan. That's not the scope baseline. The scope baseline is the scope statement, work breakdown structure, and work breakdown structure dictionary. And once we figured out that that's actually what they were asking about, we're going to get that and talk through that with them. That's what we're going to gather so that we can talk through that with them. That's your scope baseline, is those 3 items there. I think there's another one as well, but I can't remember what it is, but it's definitely answer D. Let's see. There it is. The project scope statement, work breakdown structure, and work breakdown structure dictionary are all part of the scope baseline, and work packages and planning packages are also included. There you go, so that's good to know. Work packages being the last part that you can assign to a team for them to actually work on. Page 161 under Scope Baseline in the PMBOK Guide 6th edition. And that is the last question for this section. That has been fantastic. I hope you've had a bunch of fun. I really enjoyed going through these, and I feel like I learned a little bit more about Waterfall and had a good time doing it. Always remember, you're learning something really important. Project management is so important, and it is everywhere. You'll be able to use it everywhere in your career, and it's really something that is very, very valuable. I hope to see you in the next video, and bye for now.